First of all, big news last night. Outside of probably the highest scoring and least entertaining football game I've ever seen. I was never really interested by the game, but the big news from last night was Christian McCaffrey getting traded to the Niners. The betting market, I think, overreacted a little bit in the futures market, but how does this change your outlook of San Francisco?
I think you have to upgrade them in some way, shape, or form. I don't think the impact is going to be negligible. I still have questions about Christian McCaffrey making it through a full season healthy. Like, he has to prove that he's going to be able to, stay on the field come, the important games at the end of the season for them. But the NFC is wide open. I had them in a tier of very realistic, potential NFC champions. For me, at least, the top of the NFC is Eagles, Bucks, Niners, assuming that they can get to the finish line healthy. And the fact that Jimmy G is, he has won important playoff games in his career, and he's not going to give you that playoff stinker like some other quarterbacks might in his first ever, first foray, gives the Niners, I think, some room for optimism here. We were talking about it a little bit off the air. The league generally tacking a little bit more in the direction of the running game because of the way that defenses are scheming, and the fact that his unique skill set seems to match really, really, really well with what Shanahan would want to do conceptually. Like, it seems like a match made in heaven. I hope he stays healthy. I hope this is sort of the key to help the Niners, kind of launch into the elite status. But it's still a very inconsistent team. I still have questions about Jimmy G's ability to stay healthy. So I'm not rushing to the window to make any bets whatsoever. This just throws a little bit of cold water on my optimism that Seattle was going to threaten in that division.
Yeah, that hurts. I think McCaffrey, week to week in terms of his impact on the line, he's not going to improve the Niners rating as much as he destroys Carolina's rating. So the line with Tampa Bay go from 10.5 to 13 against the Panthers. The Niners line, meanwhile, dropped from +2.5 San Francisco home to Kansas City to +2. After the news, and that's with CMC expected in a relatively limited package, just given that the trade was 3 days in advance of the game against the Chiefs. I think that there's the argument that McCaffrey is the most valuable running back in football just because of what he adds in the receiving game. But at the same time, there is a cap on what just the running back can add in terms of affecting the line. I think CMC to the Niners is probably worth, when he's at full capacity, worth like a point to the line. And that's largely because Deebo Samuel is almost the closest approximation of Christian McCaffrey in the game, outside of probably Kamara and Eckler and Saquon. So I think that it helps, but yeah, I don't think it significantly moves the needle. At PointsBet, the Niners playoff odds, Super Bowl odds moved from +1,700 to +1,600. So not the greatest deal of respect. Maybe I think that's probably about right, though, if you're talking about 1 point being added to the line and then extrapolating that out into Super Bowl odds. One interesting market I think that this may impact is that for Offensive Player of the Year, Christian McCaffrey was completely drawing dead on the Panthers, and he was +6,600. Now he's 50 to 1. It's a weird, I guess, it's a weird market to get your head around in terms of how getting traded impacts, his equity for OPOY. Obviously, it helps, but there's not much precedent for guys getting traded in any sport winning awards. But I do think that he has a path if he lifts this Niners offense and takes them to, the division and a 2 seed and leads the league in scrimmage yards, which, he's only 100 off the lead, is 50 to 1 McCaffrey Offensive Player of the Year. Anything you're interested in?
It's spooky because I didn't have that on my radar at all. And you know how we get to the end of the season and they tend to share the awards among the teams that deserve credit for how good their season was. Yes. I mean, if the Niners sprint home from here, and that's a 12-13 win team, and they're kind of clearly in sort of the top 2 of the NFC, and voters want to reward them in some way, that's probably the only case you can make for who should get an award there, I would guess. Am I missing something?
Bosa as well for Defensive Player of the Year.
You think he's still alive?
Yeah, I think he's alive. Like, he only missed one game, and Parsons didn't really do anything against the Eagles. So I think Bosa's still alive, but it is one to just keep an eye on. If McCaffrey explodes, probably not this week, but next week for 200 yards from scrimmage, then all of a sudden the drum might start getting beaten. Comeback player of the year as well. Now he's basically tied for second favorite with Geno Smith behind Saquon. Doesn't feel like he has much of a narrative the way that Saquon does in reviving his career. McCaffrey was just banged up. Now he's back. Wasn't a huge comeback story, but also one to monitor, particularly if Saquon goes down.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.